Although I may walk in the shadow of death, I will fear no evil at all, for my rod and my staff are love. My rod and my staff are love. Love prepares me a table in the face of my enemies and fills my cup to overflowing. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all my days, and I will dwell in love, and forever I'll dwell in love.
Namaste. Thank you, Leslie. Beautiful. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to return to center. I don't need that, actually. I'm already wired. Top of the morning to you. Well, we got Halloween coming up. Everybody got your mask and your costumes all figured out and what you're going to wear and all that fun stuff? I haven't either. But, you know, the truth of the matter is, whether we know it or not, whether we realize it or not, we all actually wear masks to some extent, don't we? And the masks that we wear are really kind of one of the ways that we actually are able to connect and function in the world, believe it or not. But I thought about it and thought about Halloween, and Halloween is oftentimes thought of as a scary time because, you know, there's all kinds of myths and stories about Halloween and All Saints' Day, and it really was a time to celebrate and to honor those who have passed on. And there's a lot of ideas and thoughts about how those that have passed on don't necessarily leave, that there are ghosts and spirits around, and that they are somehow here to haunt us. And so sometimes that's a little frightening for people. And so this whole thing came about, and now it's all about fear and about fright, and it seems. And it's like everybody's out there trying to find something scary. And I came across some interesting stories, you know, in a recent, I won't say it was recent, but there was an autobiography of Walter Cronkite, who was the great reporter, many of you may be aware, tells of a conversation that he once had with astronaut Wally Schirra. And said it was over a beer one night, and he says, "I promised never to tell, but off the record, that if he would level with me about what he had actually been thinking in the last minutes before his rocket blasted off." And Wally said, "Well, I was lying there looking up at all the dials and buttons and the toggle switches and on the control panel, and a thought came to me, this was built by the lowest bidder." Yeah. Well, you know, there was another story I came across. A passenger in a taxi was tapped the driver on the shoulder and said something to him. And the driver screamed and lost control of the cab and wound up running off the road and running into a tree. And you know, after they both kind of shook it all off, and the driver said, "Oh, I'm sorry. You see, this is my first day as a cab driver, and for 25 years I've been driving a hearse." Anyway, I thought it'd be a good time to talk a little bit about fear. You know, and one of the things, of course, that happens when you focus on fear is you get an opportunity to see all your fears. So I thought about this, and I looked up a definition of fear, and one definition in Webster's dictionary is, Oxford Dictionary, says the unpleasant emotion caused by the threat of danger, pain, or harm. An unpleasant, yeah, so. And I thought about that, and I'm not sure I really completely, I have a little different idea or understanding about fear. And since I've been working with Course in Miracles and really spiritual unity's teachings, I'm thinking that fear there's a little difference between fear and fright. And the difference, I think, really has to do with, fright is really actually something that we in a real sense need if we're going to stay in the physical body. Now, if we're not going to stay in the physical body, we probably don't need that. But fright is something that happens in the moment, in an immediate experience of a threat. That's what happens when you're frightened. But fear is actually a projection of something bad happening into the future. And fear is what really is the challenge for us. You know, as we go through life, if we are actually in a situation where we're standing on a railroad track and we actually see a train coming down the track, it's probably normal and natural and probably a good thing to have a little fright, because it can motivate you to do something, to take action, and to move in a way. But interestingly enough, if you are standing on a track and you may or may not see a train, but if you are imagining that the train is coming and you can move into a place that is fearful. And if you imagine yourself being hit by a train, that's more like fear. And there may not be a train there. And so in a real sense, fear is what your imagination does, and what it creates, and what it is projecting into the future. And we do that in lots of different ways, and interestingly enough. And oftentimes, fear is actually a trigger from a past fright. So we've had some kind of experience that was fearful, painful, hurtful, that we felt was dangerous in some way, but we're no longer in that situation. And yet we still hold the fear. And oftentimes, if we have another experience that's somewhat similar to that, doesn't even have to be the same kind of experience, but something that reminds us in some way of that experience, it brings back all of that energy. And we even though it's just something that reminds us of that, we project into the future something really bad. And this is what I understand fear really is. That fear is really this thing that the mind does, and then the emotional response to that. So we have an emotional response to a projected belief system that something is going to happen. Does that make sense? So this is kind of how I understand how fright and fear work. Charles Fillmore put it this way in Teach Us to Pray. He said, "We live in a world where fear is taught as essential to safety. To begin with, we are told from infancy to fear God, and then to fear evil in all forms. And with our mind crammed with fear images working night and day, how can we expect anything but the multitude of disasters that follow?" Interesting. Because we understand that our minds are creative, and whatever we hold with energy especially is one of the things that we are actually helping to create. So it's invaluable, I think, to understand the difference between a fright and a fear. In Teach Us to Pray, he also says, "The mind imagines mountains of fears where no real cause of fear exists." We all do it, whether we realize it or not. We're actually, we participate in that. We project out into the future all the bad that we think might happen. And we believe that there's something to that, and we have an emotional response to that. And then when we're doing that, whether we know it or not, we're using our creative power in a way that doesn't serve. So when we look back over the past, he says in Prosperity, when we look back over the past, we find that most of our fears are groundless, and most of the things we dreaded so much never happened. And however, the things we prepared for probably did happen, and found us not fully prepared even after all our efforts in that direction. So when we think about this, I think about the ideas, the understandings, this understanding of fear. And of course, one of the things Charles Fillmore says is fear is a great breeder of poverty, for it breaks down positive thoughts. Negative thoughts bring negative conditions in their train. And then he goes on to, in Mysteries of Genesis, he says, "Until love has done its perfect work in man, man is fearful." And so we're going to talk a little bit about what is it that we need to do to let go or release or transform love. Scripture tells us perfect love casts out fear. perfect love casts out fear. But what is perfect love? What is perfect love? It's unconditional. In a very real sense, I think perfect love really is divine love. And all of us have the capacity, we are created in the image and then after the likeness of the one that is love. Scripture tells us that God is love, and they that abide in love abide in God. And you and I are actually created in the image and after the likeness of that energy, that consciousness that is love. So, Stellatero man says, when we have enough love, we get rid of fear. And when we want to be rid of fear, for it will draw us to that which we do not want. And we do. We actually find ourselves oftentimes squirrel caging. You know what I mean by squirrel caging? We have something that is coming up for us that reminds us of some experience, and then we project that into the future, and then we actually then draw to us experiences like that, and then we get more evidence of, oh, that's the reason why I should be fearful, right? Because it happened again. Well, it happened again. The reality is, did the experience happen just in a vacuum? I don't think so. I think we are actually participating in drawing to us those things that don't serve us. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm of the opinion that we either create or promote or allow experiences. So it's not always a conscious decision, not always a conscious choice. Sometimes it's something that's going on a deeper level in us. And when we have enough love, we're able to transmute those. And we're going to talk a little bit more about and do a little exercise with that. Martha Smock in Halfway Up the Mountain says, fear is an emotion, and our emotions can sometimes seem to be so much stronger than our thoughts that when fear takes hold of us, we seem unable to think it away. There needs to be an emotion to replace fear, and the emotion that best replaces fear is love. So what she's saying here, and I think there's some real truth in this, oftentimes when we have a fear, we try to think it away, don't we? We try to, well, we'll say it again? We rationalize, or we even sometimes, and there's value in this in ways, but it's not, I would suggest to you it's not a complete transformation. We sometimes reframe, and reframe can have a good consequence. However, it's important to recognize that there's always an energy that is still tied with fear. And sometimes reframing will actually simply push that energy down. Sometimes you can actually transmute that energy and change it into something else. But oftentimes when we try to reframe, what we're doing is resisting. Does that make sense? And interestingly enough, when we resist, what we resist persists. And so it doesn't serve a lot of times for us to try and resist those things that we fear. It doesn't work. We do that. It seems like a natural response. It seems like that's what we have to do. We have to fight evil, right? We have to stamp out the negative and stamp out the bad. And, we got to just, really wipe it out. That seems kind of negative to me, doesn't it? That's kind of the energy in the field that we go after these things with. So really trying to put fear away with fear doesn't serve. It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. And it really actually just helps feed our fears. So in Make Your Dreams Come True, Stellatero man says, fear is the result of seeing only a small fraction of an arc of a circle that is too big for our eyes to see completely. So when we're in that place of fear, it's because we're not really seeing clearly. We're not seeing fully what's going on. And it's the ultimate, she goes on to say, it's the ultimate of listening is to be so at one with God that every fear known to man leaves us and forever. Wouldn't that be a nice thing? I think it's really possible. I think it's valuable. And when she says so at one with God, what is she saying? She's saying being so at one with the energy of love. Because that is one of the most predominant aspects of the divine. In Job chapter 3, verse 23, it says, for what I fear comes upon me, and what I dread befalls me. There's kind of an understanding here, a spiritual principle. It's an understanding of what I'm holding in my energy is what I'm attracting. And if that be fear, then we're attracting more of what we don't want, aren't we? This is what the law of cause and effects teaches us. That's what the whole idea of what you sow, you reap, actually teaches us. So, in Christian healing, Charles Fillmore said, "Make friends with all your adversaries quickly, whether they be persons, thoughts, or things." So how do we make friends with our fear? How do we make friends with our fear? It's a great question, isn't it? And we get back into this idea, this understanding that the Bible says God is love. In 1 John chapter 4, verse 7 through 8, in other words, love is a fundamental characteristic of the divine. And because, this is my saying, because it is a fundamental characteristic of the divine, and you and I are created in the image and after the likeness of that, it is a fundamental characteristic of our nature. It is really at the essence of who and what we are. And in 1 John chapter 4, 18, it says that perfect love casts out fear. So the whole verse says this: there's no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. And the one who fears is not made in perfect love. So our fear is not bringing us into a wholeness of who and what we are. The word perfect really, we talked about it earlier, it really means whole and complete, but it also means unconditional. It really means unconditional also in this respect. And so the Course in Miracles talks about this idea of love, and it says the Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear. But what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. And so this course can be summed up in a very simple way. Nothing real can be threatened, and nothing unreal exists. And herein lies the peace of God. The peace of God is really that understanding that really there's only love. There's only love. So where's all this fear about? Where did all this stuff come from? What's it all about? And what do we do with it? You know, when we talk about perfect love, I do think that it is unconditional love. Unconditional love really means, you see, conditional love is this. Sometimes it's easier to understand unconditional love by understanding conditional love. Conditional love says, I'll love you if, or I'll love you when, or I'll love you as, or I'll love you because. Any of that sound familiar? That's human love, to be honest. We all have love that way. We've been taught to love that way. We've been trained to love in that way. To love conditionally. To love if you do what I want, if you are the way I want you to be, if you think the way I want you to think, if you are saying the words I want to hear, if you are being the way I want you to be, then I love you. Any of that sound familiar? We do it, don't we? Sometimes it's unconscious. I'd say mostly it's unconscious. But that is conditional love. Now, don't get me wrong. It's a start. It's important. It's, you know, but in reality, it's actually manipulation, isn't it? And that's kind of what we do as human beings. And now, here's the thing. We can say, oh, I shouldn't do that, and that's not being very loving of ourselves, is it? Because the reality is we do it. And it's just one of the things that we've been conditioned to do. But unconditional love says this: I love you even though. I love you no matter what. I love you whatever. I love you whenever. I love you. Big difference, isn't it? Can you feel the difference when you think about that? How many of you want to be loved and someone to say to you, I love you, I'll love you if, or would you rather them say to you, I love you even though, or no matter what? Can you feel the difference? I mean, we know the difference. We do. And we can feel it. And it's really a part of our nature. And it's a healthy part of our nature when we really begin to see the difference between those two understandings and ways and experiences of love. So when we think about this, I've been thinking about this in terms of some of the work that I've been doing and reading and studying with Matt Kahn, who I've been talking to you a little bit about, a wonderful book called Whatever Arises, Love That. And I'm really getting a much more beautiful awareness of this idea of unconditional love. And when we look at that, one of the things he teaches is to really move into an understanding and a mantra that says that I deserve more love and not less. And whenever something comes up that seems not like that, what that means is I deserve more love and not less. And when there's something, like the Course in Miracles says, the Course in Miracles says that there really is only love or a cry for love. There's love and a cry for love. And if we're not in that place where we are holding that energy of love for ourselves or for others, actually we're in that place where we're actually crying for love. And we're actually doing wonderful things to ways to do that. Marshall Rosenberg calls them our catastrophic strategies. Catastrophic strategies for getting our needs met. And we're thinking and we're experiencing an experience that says we're not experiencing love. And one of the reasons why we're not experiencing love is because we're not giving love. We think it's because we're not getting love. That's what we've been programmed to believe. We've been programmed to believe that when we don't feel love, it's because we're not getting it. And I'm going to suggest to you that that's just not the way it is. The way it is because we're not giving it. And the place and where we're most not giving it, where we need to give it, where we must give it, I believe first, is to our own heart. This is one of the things Matt Kahn is teaching me, is that if we're not giving love to that part of ourselves that loves, then the energy of love is blocked. You see, I've come to the understanding over the years that when we love ourselves, it's not selfish. It's absolutely one of the most loving things we can do for the world. Because the reality is, when I love myself, I am allowing the energy of love, which is the divine, to express through me as love for myself. And in the very act of doing that, I'm actually opening my heart so that that energy of love pours over and flows outward so that it really can pour out and over to others. But if I am in a place where I'm trying to get everything and everyone else out here in the world to fill up my bucket of love, I'm actually blocking the energy of love. Does that make sense? And so part of our learning to grow spiritually, learning to heal this whole thing about fear, is really learning how this energy of love works and how we need to direct it and how we need to work with it. Every fear, here's another wonderful quote from the Course in Miracles. Every fear we have is like a child within us that is seeking and crying out for love. Every fear. So think about, I'm going to ask you to think about some fear that you have. Now, probably right now you're saying, well, I don't have any fears. I'm not afraid of anything. There's some little voice in there that may say that. Or you may have immediately said, oh, yeah, there's that one. Notice that one. What is a fear that you have? And what I ask you to do is take a second now and know that you are a work of God. And His work is wholly lovable and wholly loving. This is how a man must and a woman must think of themselves in their heart, because this is what they are, what he is, what she is. This is from the Course in Miracles. And everything that arises in our hearts, everything that arises in our thoughts and feelings and emotions is actually a part of a greater divine experience. And so if you think about that fear that may come up for you, find that inside of yourself. Find that part of you that's holding on to that fear. Can you do that? Take a second now and just listen to that part of you. And then just notice where that is in your body. Notice where you feel it in your body. Notice where you feel the energy of that in your body. Can you do that? Where are you holding that thought, feeling, that energy? And then notice and then take that now and move your awareness into your heart. Move into your heart and take a moment now and feel the energy of love. And now, from your heart, say to that part of you that holds that fear, you deserve more love and not less. And just see it as a little child that's crying out for love, trying to get your attention, trying to get you to notice, trying to get you to pay attention to that part of you. And just say to it, I love you. I love you. I love you. And just say it over and over again. I love you. And just do that. And just see if you don't notice. See if you notice anything. See if you notice, I just noticed somebody taking a deep breath. Just keep saying it. I love you. Just notice that part of you. Can you feel that? And just say, I love you. In your mind's eye, you might even imagine yourself holding a small child that's crying for love, trying to comfort it. I love you. And if there's some thought that seems resistant to this, just notice where that part of you is that holds that resistance. Can you notice that? And just say to that part of you, I love you. Now, we're not trying to change it. We're not trying to get it to stop being afraid. We're not trying to make it not okay to be afraid. We're just saying and holding that energy of love for that part of ourselves. And we're not trying to get rid of the resistance even. Just notice the resistance and send love to it. I love you. Breathe into it. I love you. I love you. Yeah, just take a nice deep breath. What'd you notice about that? I'm going to ask a few questions. What did you notice? What happened for you? Anything? Relaxed? Softened. Same, softened. Anyone else? Did you happen to notice that wherever you notice that in your body, what do you notice about that place now? Anybody notice any changes? Ruth? In your hand? Your hand doesn't hurt. Isn't that interesting? Anybody else? Yeah, one of the things I notice is that when I'm in a place of fear, when I experience fear, I feel constriction, and usually it's for me right here in my chest area. Not always, but oftentimes. Sometimes it's in my throat. Sometimes I feel it there. Sometimes I feel it here. But when I'm able to do that and send love to that part of myself that's holding on to that energy of fear, what I experience is a releasing. It's like that no longer feels tight. It no longer feels constricted. Same way in my throat. When I let go of that feeling of fear, when I let go, and when I say let go, it's interesting because you don't really want to approach this with the idea, I'm going to make you let this go. Because that's not letting go, is it? You really want to approach it with, it's okay. See, interestingly enough, that part of you that's holding on to that fear thinks it's there for a good reason. It thinks it's trying to protect you. And this is actually a part of our ego mind, and it's there for a purpose. It thinks it's there to protect you. But the reality is, as Charles Fillmore said in the beginning, is that belief system that fear is here to protect us is erroneous, because it's not fear that protects us. It is love. And when we can move back into that space and that energy of love over and over again, and we can just take each fear that may come into our life and experience and send it love, it becomes something else. We're able to hear whatever. Interestingly enough, it lets go of the fear, and it actually opens up the possibility for inspiration and for guidance and for wisdom. It clears the energy so that we can really move it back into a space where we can really listen to that still small voice inside of us that's saying a yes or a no. Go this way or go that way. You follow me? So we really can hear our guidance much more when we love our fears and listen to what's trying to be given to us and the message that's trying to be there for us that is behind the fear. Because there's some wisdom that's trying to be revealed. Does that make sense? So here's your practice for the week. This is our practice for this week and probably for, as I say, for the rest of our lives. But I've been doing this. It's been really very freeing for me. And I want to share that with you. And I hope you'll take some time to really meditate on this. We're going to do a meditation, do some more of this in just a moment. And let's actually move into our meditation time. Let's take a nice deep breath now. Actually, I don't need that. Take a nice deep breath. Breathe into the heart space. And as you breathe into that heart space, we open our heart space to the light, the love that God is, to the energy of love, to the feeling of love, to the power of love. And we allow ourselves be open to unconditional love. You see, there's a love that's flowing to you right now that says, I love you, no matter what. I love you, even though. I love you. Whatever. I love you. And you're a part of that. You're a part of that love. And that love is a part of you. And every voice and every thought and every feeling and every energy that comes up that doesn't feel like that, that doesn't resemble that or doesn't look like that, is really that little child inside. It's that little child that is holding on to some fear. Perhaps it's a fear of not good enough, a fear of rejection. Perhaps it is a fear of being harmed. Perhaps it is a fear of not being loved. Perhaps it's a fear of failure. Perhaps it's a fear of success. And whatever that might take, just take a moment now and see if you can locate. Just notice any fears that you hold right now. And just see if you can find that part of you that's holding that fear, that little voice inside. And just know it's like a child, and they're all just kind of lining up for the next one that comes up is the one that's in the front of the line waiting to be loved. And just bring that one into your heart and just say, it's okay, thank you, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And you're just there to love that part of you. you. I love you. I love you. And if some other thought comes up that seems to be more like fear than love, just notice that part of you. Notice where you feel that in your body. And just take a moment and from your heart, just bring that part of you into your heart. And just say, I love you. Just surround it and fill it with love. And so even though you're afraid, I love you. Even though you're angry, I love you. Even though you're anxious, I love you. Even though I love you. Whatever arises, just send love to that. Just send love to it. And feel the energies being transmuted, shifted. And take another nice deep breath. Let your awareness come back into this room, this time and place. Be open to that energy of love. Send that energy of love out into this room. And just consider that each and every one in this room is actually in some way a reflection of you. And just say, I love you. I love you. I love you. And then just expand that out. And just think about the people in your life and know that every one of them is some part of you. They wouldn't be in your life if it wasn't true. So from your heart, just say, I love you. I love you. I love you. Take another nice deep breath. Let your awareness come into this room, this time, this place. And say to yourself, I love you. I love you. Nice deep breath. Let your awareness be in this room, here and now. Gently open your eyes. And so it is. So it is.